Well, LSU women's basketball fell to Caitlin Clark in the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Elite Eight, which begs the question, what are Angel Reese's plans for next season? And it begs the even larger question, would it be more lucrative for Angel Reese to stay in college rather than take the leap to the WNBA?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, y'all? Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including Locked On LSU on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, and then you'll get notifications as soon as new episodes of the podcast drop. So you will get up-to-date information from the Locked On LSU podcast. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I am your host, as I am every single day. And LSU was a heartbreaking loss on Monday night in the Elite Eight to Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes. And looking back at that game, there are several things that LSU could have done better. It was a poor shooting night. They missed several wide open threes. Why Haley Van Lith was on Caitlin Clark as long as she was one-on-one, frankly, I don't know, because she was getting cooked all night long. So there's several areas that that LSU could have been better. It was a basically dormant third quarter offensively for LSU, and that really was kind of the final straw for this team. It was just too much to overcome after a really, really tough offensive third quarter. So tough loss for LSU. I know everybody, all the LSU haters out there, and there are a lot of them, have been, kind of rubbing it in all of our faces. A lot of Iowa fans feeling like they're finally vindicated for the national championship last year. And you know what? Great. Enjoy it. To the victor, go the spoils. Good luck in the Final Four. And I wish Caitlin Clark and this Iowa team nothing but the best. But now there's questions about what comes next for this team. Once you're out, that's the initial question. What comes next? What about next year? What are you going to do to make sure that you don't just get back to this place next year, but how do you ensure that you find yourself back in the Final Four, back in the national championship conversation, and ultimately back hoisting a trophy and raising a banner at the end of next season? That is now the main objective for this team. But that, I think, has to go along with the question of what are Angel Reese's plans next year. Angel Reese does have 1 year of eligibility remaining, but she also can declare for the WNBA Draft. Does she want to go ahead and declare and take that next step and play professionally, or does she want to come back to LSU and finish the business that she started, which is winning another national championship? Now, selfishly, I hope that Angel Reese comes back because I love that Angel Reese plays basketball for my team. And I love what Angel Reese brings to this team. I love the fire that Angel Reese brings, and I love the attention, frankly, that Angel Reese brings to the game of women's college basketball. She's a character. She's someone to follow. She's something tangible that maybe new women's college basketball fans to kind of hold on to. And I think that she, along with Caitlin Clark and along with Dawn Staley and Camila Cardoso and Paige Beckers at UConn and Juju Watkins at USC and Kiki Rice at UCLA, so on and so forth, they have all paid dividends to the popularity of the sport. So selfishly, I hope that she comes back, but also it's ultimately her decision. And if she decides that she wants to go pro, well, she's earned that right. But I do wonder, as far as and it's Angel Reese's decision. It's not my decision to make for her, nor is it your decision to make for her. But is it really lucrative to go to the WNBA? I've wondered this as far as the popularity of women's college basketball this year. And even last year too. The records for viewership for women's college basketball games have been shattered. I haven't seen the final total yet from ESPN of what the viewership of the LSU Iowa game was, but I have to imagine it was somewhere like in the 8-9 million range. And just to kind of put that into perspective, 10 million, I think, is kind of the the standard for like a massive college football game on ESPN, like an LSU Alabama game, 6:00 kickoff on ESPN or ABC kind of game. That's about like the 10 million range. So I think that it's doing college football numbers. So there's, with this new popularity, this growth of the game, the fact that the women's college basketball viewership has multiplied by hundreds, is her brand more lucrative? Is her brand more valuable? And is her brand bigger in an LSU uniform than it would be in a WNBA uniform? And I think it would be. And you could think completely differently. And whatever Angel Reese's priorities are, that is her prerogative. But whenever you play in the NCAA, you already have a faction of a fan base. You already have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that are going to cheer for you because you wear the uniform of the school that they love, the school that they attended, and the school that they cheer for. I'm an LSU fan, and I'm going to cheer for any LSU team, whether that's football, baseball, basketball, women's basketball, track, beach volleyball, swimming and diving, softball, so on and so forth. You play for LSU, I'm going to cheer for you. You play for LSU, I want you to win. And I'm not alone in that. You listening to this podcast, you probably feel the same way. WNBA fan bases, on the other hand, you don't have that fan base already carved out because you don't have that already existing fan base. Like if I want to be let me just pick a random team, an Indiana Fever fan or a Vegas Aces fan, like I have to actively choose to be a fan of that team. I'm already an LSU fan because I went to LSU and I graduated from LSU. So it feels like there's a much larger barrier to entry for the fan base. The other thing is the exposure. Women's college basketball has the television deal with ESPN. And with the television deal with ESPN, you are getting studio shows with three of the biggest names in college basketball coverage in Chiney Ogwumike and Andrea Carter and Elle Duncan. You have a studio show completely dedicated to the games that you play in the NCAA tournament, like we saw ahead of the Elite Eight game on Monday. You have Holly Rowe on the sidelines of your games. You're on primetime ESPN television. You're on primetime television on ABC, like the national championship game was last year. So you're on primetime network television. You don't have that same kind of exposure in the WNBA. Now, of course, when it comes to coming back to school or leaving school, when you come back to LSU, of course, Angel Reese is going to have to deal with the things in school that she wouldn't have to deal with in the WNBA. Because when she comes back to LSU, if she comes back to LSU, she has to go to class and she has to do the homework and you have to, get past all of the NCAA red tape and check all the boxes to make sure that you are, NCAA compliant and you are NCAA eligible. You don't have to worry about that at the WNBA level. But if we just want to talk about the business side of things, because if that's her dream and she wants to pursue her dream of being a WNBA player, then go do it. But if we're just going to talk about the dollars and cents in the business side of things, in terms of exposure, in terms of fan base, and in terms of marketability, having the LSU market already existed and having the LSU brand associated with Angel Reese, I believe only makes her brand stronger. Makes her brand stronger than if she was associated with a team in the WNBA. And that is no disrespect to the WNBA whatsoever. But college programs, frankly, they garner more interest in the brands traditionally are going to be stronger. So that's my 2 cents on it. And look, Angel Reese can do whatever she wants to do. Angel Reese can prioritize whatever she wants to prioritize. But I think this is a conversation much larger than the conversation that we're having about Angel Reese. But it's going to be something that I'm going to follow Caitlin Clark, because Caitlin Clark has already declared for the WNBA draft. Does her popularity and her marketability continue in the WNBA at the same rate that it is with her at Iowa? I don't know. We'll see. And these are going to be conversations that we're going to have whenever Flau'jae Johnson or Michaela Williams become WNBA draft eligible and they have to make that decision. If we're just talking money, if we're just talking business, at least it looks like to me on paper, with the information that I have available, now that NIL is a thing, it only helps you to stick around as long as you possibly can. All right, coming up next, I want to continue some of the reactions, some of the talk after the Elite Eight game, because I knew no matter what happened, LSU wins, there was going to be a large facet of people upset that they won. LSU loses, there's going to be a massive population of people that were glad to see them gone and were glad to see Angel Reese lose. But there was, and which is, I think, kind of unfair and a little bit silly, a lot of it silly, but there was one clip that went viral, and a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions about an Angel Reese post-game comment. I want to get into that coming up next after just a few words from our sponsors. Okay, I want to tell you about Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. So whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you are going to want to have a Fire TV. So Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels, which deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands. Best part, it's all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and so much more to keep up to date on all of the latest in the world of sports. There's March Madness going on. We are in the Final Four on both the men's and women's side. Got NBA, MLB, and of course, so much more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. So whatever your interests are, whether it's sports or something other than sports, you can check it out on Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we are part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. So you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day. Do you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. There's always going to be, no matter what happens, if Angel Reese does or says something, there's going to be a massive reaction one way or another. If Kim Mulkey does or says something, there is going to be a massive reaction one way or another. And frankly, it is exhausting. It is exhausting, the response that that this team gets. And I made the point today on my radio show. I said, honestly, I don't think I've ever experienced this much vitriol geared toward a single athlete or team. And I know that there have been several villain stories in the past. I understand that. But it feels like with social media, everything just seems completely emphasized. Everything seems 10 times worse. Because beforehand, the loudest voices were the ones on TV and radio, but now everyone's got an avenue. Everyone's got a channel to be able to tell you how much they don't like you and calling you all of these nicknames. See, even the LA Times gets a little bit of a piece of it. So it doesn't matter what happens or what they do or what they say. Angel Reese or Kim Mulkey or this team as a whole, they're going to be just completely ripped apart. Like, I don't even remember his name. But honestly, the reporter last night that tweeted out the video and pointed out that LSU wasn't on the court for the national anthem. I think that's such a lazy attempt at stirring the pot and trying to, to get clicks and to get engagement on social media, just playing into this already written narrative that people just don't like LSU basketball, women's basketball, rather. Little does that reporter know, it's hardly ever on the court for the national anthem. I actually saw a tweet earlier today that that's not the only women's basketball team that does that, or basketball team in general that does that. It's actually a really common thing since the national championship is played about 10 minutes before tip-off. I know this team for a fact. They have a pregame routine, and sometimes the national anthem doesn't fit into that. But no, it's easier to push narratives, and it's easier to throw gasoline into the fire than it is to actually provide nutritious coverage and interesting and intriguing coverage, because the conversation always has to be about this team's good and this team's bad. We can't have actually that good nuanced discussion about matchups and keys to the game and things to watch. No, it's got to be about the national anthem. Ridiculous. But Angel Reese had a post-game response that went viral on social media. This is what Angel Reese had to say.
I don't really get to stand up for myself. I mean, I have great teammates. I have a great support system. I got my hometown. I got my family that stands up for me. I don't really get to speak out on things just because I just try to ignore, and I just try to stand strong. Like, I've been through so much. I've seen so much. I've been attacked so many times. Death threats. I've been sexualized. I've been threatened. I've been so many things, and I've stood strong every single time. And I just try to stand strong for my teammates because I don't want them to see me down and, like, not be there for them. So I just want them to always just know, like, I'm still a human. Like, all this has happened since I won the national championship, and I said the other day, I haven't had peace since then. And it sucks, but I still wouldn't change. I wouldn't change anything, and I would still sit here and say, like, I'm unapologetically me. I'm going to always leave that mark and be who I am and stand on that. And hopefully the little girls that look up to me, and hopefully I give them some type of inspiration that, hopefully it's not this hard and all the things that come at you, but keep being who you are. Keep waking up every day. Keep being motivated, staying who you are, staying 10 toes, don't back down, and just be confident.
And that was Angel Reese post-game, and my heart breaks for her, hearing her say that and watching her tear up, because I've seen it, and you probably have too. It doesn't matter if it's her social media posts or social media posts about her. All of the responses are calling her such horrible things. She sees those things. And I have a couple thoughts on that, because I do think that two things can be true at the same time. First and foremost, I think that it can be true that the backlash and the negativity toward her and toward this team is just absurd. It's horrendous. The things that people think are okay to say, the outwardly rude and racist and sexist comments toward this team, whether it's good versus evil, or the dirty debutantes or anything else, any horrific things that we see on social media. I mean, she's a 22-year-old girl. Like, let's remember that. She's a human being. My goodness. So I think that's true, that she's right, that she has received nothing but hate. But on the other hand, I also have to be real. That whenever you are as proud as Angel Reese is, a lot of people lose sympathy for you in situations like this. A lot of people might look at it like, look, you can talk the talk when you walk the walk, but now all of a sudden you're not walking the walk, so you can't talk the talk. I don't agree with the sentiment, but I understand the sentiment. That you're a public figure, and unfortunately, that kind of negativity comes back to you, and that negativity is unavoidable. Anyone that has been in the public sphere in the slightest understands what I'm talking about. That there's going to be losers on social media that say things about you all the time. And there's nothing that you can do about it. But it has been on just another level with her. But I also do understand the sentiment of, you want to touch the ring finger and and you want to be, this unapologetic figure, well, whenever you lose a game, a very public game on a very large stage, and then it's followed up with tears, you don't get a lot of sympathy. As unfair as that might feel, and as unfair as that might seem, that unfortunately that is what it is in the court of public opinion. But I stand by what I said. I want Angel Reese to come back because she has done wonderful things for the sport. And as that clip was playing, I just saw this notification. Iowa LSU, 12.3 million viewers. 12.3 million. That is massive. To put that into perspective, this is coming in from Richard Deitch, who writes for The Athletic. It says if you want some context for that, the viewership for the Iowa LSU number tops every single World Series game in 2023 and all but one NBA Finals game in 2023 as well. That is what Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and so many others, coaches and players, have done and continue to do for the game. I want to talk a little baseball coming up next because, man, it was just a Monday night full of heartbreaks, truly. Let's talk if it is, in fact, panic time for this LSU baseball team, and we will do that coming up next. All right, I want to tell you about FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on the action. Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $200 that you can use to bet the tourney, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet a huge win. And we have got great games coming up. We got the Final Four on the women's side this weekend, Final Four on the men's side this weekend as well. This is one of the first times I have to think, I don't know off the top of my head, but both NC State and UConn women's and men's team are in the Final Four. If you think that the heat continues on both sides, whether it's UConn or NC State, the men's or the women's, put some money on it and do it with FanDuel. Again, that's FanDuel.com/locked-on, FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON, FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. What a brutal Monday evening for LSU fans. It was just salt in the wound. Not only did the LSU women's team fall to Iowa on Monday night, but LSU baseball also fell to Southern in a midweek game, 12-7. Coming off of a sweep, got swept by Arkansas this past weekend. And after they lost that game on Thursday, which was a very winnable game, I actually caught up with Kramer Robertson, former LSU baseball player. He said, look, I'm not worried. They're going to figure it out. It's a new team. They've got talented players. And I thought, yeah, you're right. You've been there before. You know what that's like. Early in the season, the team can be drastically different than what it is in late April and in May and going into the postseason. But, man, I have to be honest with y'all. After getting swept by Arkansas, after losing that game against Southern. And look, I don't want to diss the Southern baseball program, but let's be honest. They're two very different programs with different investment and with drastically different expectations. And the expectation at LSU is that you beat teams like Southern, all respect in the world of Southern. And the expectation is, at the very least, that you come out in that game on fire, that you come out of that game motivated, that you come out of that game feeling embarrassed after getting swept by Arkansas. You come back home, you're on your own home turf, you've lost 3 in a row, you have an opportunity to at least pick up a win in the midweek and get a little bit of momentum going before you host Vanderbilt the upcoming weekend. But they didn't come out that way. That didn't look like, to me, on Monday, like a team that was motivated, like a team that was embarrassed after getting swept. And it feels like it's the same old story, night in and night out, at least since conference play started. The pitching isn't good enough. Far too many walks. you're leaving far too many players, you're losing far too many runners in scoring position. That you're leaving guys stranded on second and third with 3 consecutive outs after you get 2 men on base. That's not good enough. You give up 12 runs to Southern. You only were able to muster up 4 hits. And yeah, you got 7 runs off of those 4 hits, but scoring 7 runs should be enough. It should be enough to win, especially in a midweek game against Southern. But not when you give up 12. The offense is abysmal. The defense makes far too many mistakes, costly mistakes, and the pitching is inconsistent and up and down. And I don't know what happened, because it does feel like a different team in conference play versus preseason. Pre-conference play, not preseason, pre-conference play. That Cade Anderson was looking like he could have been a really solid option for you, if not in the starting rotation over the weekend, at least in some sort of relief capacity on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday night. But last night, Cade Anderson only went 2 innings and gave up 3 runs and 3 hits. You're not going to win very many games that way. LSU's now sitting at 2-7 in SEC play. That's the 3rd worst record in the conference. I know it's a really difficult conference. I know it's a competitive conference. But you came into this season as one of the highest touted and most well-respected teams in that conference. What we're seeing is just unacceptable. Am I going to hit the panic button? I'm dangerously close. They need to turn things around this weekend against Vanderbilt. You sweep Vanderbilt. Does that all of a sudden make you forget about getting swept by Arkansas and dropping 2 out of 3 against Florida when you really had an opportunity to win 2 out of those? When you could have had an opportunity to win those 2 that you did in fact lose. That Saturday night game that was just truly a heartbreaker. Friday, winnable game. I think that series against Arkansas, could have found a way to win them. You just didn't. So does that all of a sudden right the wrongs? No. But at least makes you feel more encouraged about this team figuring something out. And frankly, just getting a few wins in the win and loss column. It's been way too many losses as of late. And that loss to Southern just feels like a new low. That loss to Southern just feels like even more demoralization. Because it's demoralizing to get swept. And it's demoralizing to get swept against a team that really you should have stacked up well against in Arkansas. And yeah, I could have found several areas in which LSU could have found ways to win all 3 of those games. But they didn't. And that's all that matters. You don't get the benefit of the doubt. And you don't get asterisks next to games that you could have had an opportunity to win and you just didn't because you blew it. Got to find ways to close these games. You have to find ways to get guys that are on base to bring them home. You have to find ways to just find some sort of life. I haven't been seeing a whole lot of it. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU, we'll do a Mailbag Wednesday. So get those questions in. You can send them out on Twitter. You can send them in on YouTube. However you want to get them in, just get in on the conversation for a Mailbag Wednesday on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.